Today on the show, strategy plus action equals cultivating happiness as an entrepreneur. Great coaches and consultants like you have the ability to change people's lives and transform entire organizations. And your impact can often go far beyond the clients you work with. One of the reasons I love working with coaches and consultants is because of that ripple effect. This show is here to highlight your expertise and empower you with resources and new ideas to grow your business. Welcome to Strategy in Action. Robert Peterson is on the show today, and we have a phenomenal conversation around this idea, honestly, of happiness and what it means to really have that in your life, particularly as an entrepreneur, but really across the board, right? If you're working for a 9-to-5 somewhere, all of these same things apply. We find that as an entrepreneur, it's even harder to cultivate at times because there's no outlet. Even if, with a 9-to-5, you're maybe finding an unhealthy outlet or just, not finding happiness within the work you do. But then as soon as you walk away, I can have my life and do all those things. As an entrepreneur, there's no walking away, when you haven't set those boundaries, right? And that's a big piece of it, of finding that happiness. And Robert has really built a coaching practice around this idea of finding that core element of why you started in business in the first place and making sure that we bring that front and center and use that as a filter to make some structural changes and some new intentions around everything else that we do in life and business. And not that we're necessarily making the business the core thing, but that why you started, whether it was for freedom or a certain goal, or so many times it's to spend more time with family, and then that's the last thing we end up being able to do. But find that core thing and build your business, your life around that, so that end goal that you're going for is protected and you're moving towards that on a consistent basis. You can find out more about Robert and how he's helping folks at addvaluetolife.com. All right, let's jump in. Robert Peterson, welcome to the show.
Jason, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I love all the people I'm getting to meet right now on LinkedIn and various groups. And, you're that perfect example of that, of, hey, let's meet, let's connect. And what I've adopted a long time ago was sure, like, yes, and then we'll figure it out, right? Like sometimes it's an obvious thing. Sometimes it's like, man, that'd be great. Let's see who each other is and all that fun stuff. And I think you've got a similar mindset there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love connecting with people and learning what they're doing. And if there's ways we can collaborate or ways we can serve each other, let's figure it out. But we only figure that out by having a conversation.
Yeah, and we had a great conversation the other day. It was just fantastic. I love what you're doing, and I thought, wow, what a perfect opportunity to have you on the show and discuss this idea of happiness, really, as an entrepreneur. I think it's one of those words that's it's a loaded word, right? It means so many things to different people. And when I saw that, like, that's your specialty, like that's your goal and your mission, and I want to hear that from you and your words and where that came about. I thought that's so great because it's such an important thing that we tend to trivialize it, a lot of times in our society overall, or maybe just in different times of our lives, right? Of just like, yeah. Well, everyone wants to be happy, blah, blah, blah. Let me get back to work, right? And I love the idea of, no, stop for a second. Let's look at this, right? As a goal and opportunity. So tell us a little bit about that life's mission that you have right now and what's got you to that point.
Well, I mean, obviously we got into the coaching space from a ministry space, spent 20 years in Christian ministry, working with people, helping people grow. And really the coaching space is very similar, right? Our goal is to help people change bad habits for good habits. Ultimately, that's the bottom line of what coaching is. But what we really started to see when we're working with entrepreneurs is how many entrepreneurs started their business with this passion and purpose and this idea of vacations and time and spending more time with their kids. And then the business takes over. And now the business is this job. It's this behemoth that's kind of running their life instead of them running their business. And they've lost joy. Well, most people don't identify with joy, but they do identify with being unhappy. And then I borrowed the mission kind of from Mike Michalowicz, whose mission is to end entrepreneurial poverty. And I was like, well, then my mission is to end entrepreneurial unhappiness, right? I don't want entrepreneurs who've taken on this huge commitment to run a business, to make an impact in the world. There's no reason they should be unhappy. They should be the happiest people on the planet because they've got a mission to make a difference and to solve problems and provide solutions. And I think entrepreneurs should be like the happiest, people on the planet, and yet they're not. And so, we come alongside and really help them. Let's bring the things that bring you joy back to the center of your business, and let's build your business around joy. And then the money will come, the time freedom will come, and you'll be taking care of the things that matter most to you.
I love that. And I want to dig into to some of the how for sure. But even before we get there, right? It's for the people who are still just like happiness, blah blah blah. Let's dig into why does it really matter, and how is that manifesting itself, and clear up what I am quite sure you don't mean is just like you should just like once you work with us, nothing ever goes wrong. You're never upset. You're just happy all the time. And I think that's the biggest one. Like, okay, we obviously don't mean that, but like, let's address both of those things a little bit.
Yeah, but I think that idea, that woo-woo idea of the power of positivity and just think positive or only look at the positive side of life, it does have a woo-woo element, right? And for people that haven't experienced that level of control in their mind, really feel like, wow, that's just not possible. Well, I mean, the truth is that there is some possibility in that positivity. But like you mentioned, this isn't that life goes perfect and there's nothing wrong in your life. I think what happens is our goal is to help people fill up their joy bucket, right? So you got this joy bucket inside you, and we're going to help you create some tools and some habits that fill that bucket up so that when the shit hits the fan, that bucket's not completely empty. And I think the problem is that our culture's created this place, especially in the workplace, where we're working the 9 to 5, we're working for the weekend, we're working for the vacation. Work has become a pretty negative thing for most people. They're only working for the money. They're only working to get by. They're only working to get what they want. And they start a business as an entrepreneur to kind of get away from work. But the problem is the only way to make an income still requires work. So why not create work that brings you joy? And if the work brings you joy, then you're filling your joy bucket while earning your income. And so that's what we want to help entrepreneurs focus on. It's really that same mindset, right? We're changing bad habits for good habits. And some of those good habits are focused on intentionally filling up your bucket so that you're doing activities throughout your day with your family, with your work, with your business, with your clients that bring you joy. And so you're filling up your bucket instead of the typical person's going through their day, dumping what little bit of their bucket they managed to fill up on the weekend through their Monday and Tuesday. And of course, by hump day, right? Wednesday, we call hump day because it's like the middle of the misery. And we're sliding into the weekend with, no joy at all on Thursday and Friday and just can't wait to get to the weekend. Well, that's a ridiculous way to live, right? We should be able to be going through our lives, doing things we enjoy, accomplishing things for people, making an impact. And the truth is, when you're making an impact, that's adding to your joy bucket, right? And so the problem you solve, whether that's, fixing somebody's pipes in their house or fixing their air conditioner or coaching them or counseling them, all of those things are really human problems that we're solving. And why shouldn't you be filling your joy bucket up if you're helping people?
The joy bucket, like that's how we interact with others. Like our closest people need us to have this full bucket to dip into, right? If that thing's empty by Tuesday, it's not just about us and how we feel. We got nothing in there for anybody else.
They're part of filling that bucket up. So you have to be intentional. You can't be ignoring your family and saying, I'm doing this for my family. This business is all about my family. And you're ignoring your family when they're the ones that in the morning, the evening, when you have time with them, they should be filling your bucket up. Instead, you get home exhausted, just like you get exhausted from a job, and you plop onto the couch. You're just like, no, I just can't deal with you right now. Right. And the kids are overwhelming. The wife wants some attention, and you're stuck and you feel stuck. And of course, feeling stuck just drains the bucket even more. And there's too many people that are kind of stuck in this. I mean, I call it, so the brain really has two states, right? The fight and flight, stress and anxiety creates this fight and flight state where we're fighting for our lives. Our brain is literally saying there's a lion outside the door and he's going to eat us. And we have to be prepared for that. And the brain is gearing the body up for that. Or we're in this joy state, and that's created through relationship. It's created through having these interconnectedness with other human beings, and that's what fills up the joy bucket. And we all know the difference. We've all felt the difference. We all know how much better our conversations are with our kids or with our spouse when our joy bucket's got some stuff in it. And we all know what those conversations are like when we're stressed and anxious and we're in that fight or flight mode, because guess what happens when your brain goes into fight or flight? It turns off all of the relational expertise you have. All of the relational wisdom is gone. Not because you don't have it anymore. The brain is simply saying, we have to live. That means we're fighting. And if you turn off all those relational things with your wife and with your kids, guess what you're doing to those relationships? You're breaking them instead of building them up. And it's not even on purpose, right? There's a little voice inside of you that's watching this all happen going, holy smoke, what's happening? I don't understand. Who's talking right now? Like you know it's happening and you can't stop it because your brain has switched gears. And unless you start to have an awareness of that, you're stuck creating chaos in your family and chaos in these other relationships that are important to you because you've allowed the stress and anxiety and pressure of running your company, of running your business, of doing the things that you think you have to be doing to make the money, to get the things that you think you want, right? It just becomes overwhelming. And in that stress and anxiety state of fight and flight, there's no way to fill your joy bucket.
Yeah, and it's just a downward spiral at that point too. Like there's no way out of it, right? If you don't change a big portion because you get stressed out at home, that's going horribly. So that's what you're thinking about when you're supposed to be running your business and you're stressed and it's affecting you there, which means you don't get the stuff done. So then when you're home and you should be building those relationships, all you're thinking about is your business tanking because you're not doing enough when you're supposed to be. And and so enter Robert, right? Like enter Robert's solution to this. And I have no doubt that, everyone that comes and gets help from you has, you have a little bit of different prescription depending on their needs, but what are some of the big levers or those core principles that, when it gets into, okay, how do I do something about this? Where does that come in?
Yeah. I mean, obviously the biggest thing for most people is we're going to help you be intentional in almost every area of your life, right? So everybody talks about being intentional with your time and being intentional with your money, and those are really important aspects. But what about those relationships? And so let's be intentional about those relationships, because those are the things that you're either using for your own good or they're draining the life out of you, in spite of you wanting them to do the other. So let's find out what's really important to you, and let's create some boundaries around those things. Let's create some boundaries in your business around those things. And then those boundaries allow you to make some different decisions about how you're using your time, about how you're using your money, and you start using it all for your own good. Well, then you start to also gain that awareness of, holy smoke, I'm stressed out, I'm anxious. Maybe this isn't the best time to have a conversation with the wife about the kids going to college, right? And so that awareness starts to help protect your relationships and create opportunities for growing them instead of beating them up
Yeah, for sure. But then that second half coming into play too, right? Of like have that awareness, like this isn't the time to have this conversation, but then to be able to communicate that to your wife and go like, I got it. I totally value this conversation, and I know it needs to be it needs to be handled the best way. Here's where my mind is right now. Like, can we schedule this? Like this Saturday, can we just sit down for this little block of time? And man, you talk about relieving anxiety on both sides. That's huge.
No, absolutely. And so that's kind of the place where we start, right? What's the dream? What is the passion? What is the impact that you wanted to make by starting the business, right? Most entrepreneurs started for a reason, right? And so let's go back to that reason, and then let's identify those things that are really important to you, and let's bring those back to the center and put those right in the beginning. And then let's talk about how does your business operate on a day-to-day basis that supports these things instead of putting them off on the horizon of someday. And it's easy, right? Our temptation based on our work experience, based on the cultural expectations of the 9 to 5 and working for the weekend and saving up for the jet ski and saving up for the family vacation is we do that someday, right? And so it's really easy when you're running your business that you started to spend more time with the family. It's really easy to say, oh, well, we're getting closer, right? If I just make a little more money, if I just get that really big deal, and we keep putting it off to someday. But why not bring those things back to the center, and why not build the business in a way that honors those things to begin with? And then the money's not as important. It just isn't, because now you're really focusing on what really matters. What's kind of cool is when the money's not important, it still comes.
Exactly. Yeah, that's huge. And even if someone's watching now, and you know I don't have a family. That's not, I'm just focused on my business. I'm this and that. You still started for some kind of reason. Some people, like you mentioned earlier, some people are running from a corporate, job and things like that. Um, we hope they're not running from the idea of work, because again, I love that you brought that up, because work is not this bad, horrible word that it's become, right? In the
Which
corporate
shouldn't be, for
culture.
sure. We should
Yeah.
enjoy work. You're going to spend 40 to 50% of your life doing work. Let's do work that honors who we are, honors what we were created for, and honors the purpose within and passions within us. Then work becomes so much more meaningful and so much more enjoyable. And imagine just how your attitude is throughout a day, that the things you're doing feel like I'm actually accomplishing something. I'm doing things that matter. Well, part of that's the
Yeah.
story you tell yourself about what really matters, right? And the story you tell yourself about work can really shift your attitude towards what your business is accomplishing.
This applies just as much to, you know, the single person out there who is just focused on business and want to do that. There's still a way to go about this. Again, right back to what you talk about with intentionality of like, what is that core thing that you wanted to do with this? And sometimes it is just, I am just focused on this end goal of the business and all of that. But it's
It can be get wealthy. It can be
yeah,
have a
and that's
giant
fine.
mansion. It can be have a state in Mexico and the Caribbean. I mean, all of those things are possible. My point is, let's be intentional. And so let's have that intentionality to say, this is what I want. This is what I need to do to get it. And whether
Yeah.
that's, and I think that even if you're single and you don't have a family and you don't have these other things, you still have relationships that matter. You still have connections with other human beings that matter, because those connections are what fuel our brain, right? Seeing somebody across the room that smiles at you and says, "Man, I'm happy to see you." That's fuel for the brain. The brain needs that. The brain needs this networking. It needs these connections. It needs the conversations like you and I said, "Hey, we met on this LinkedIn call. Let's connect and let's have a call." And the brain needs those connections. And so you need to intentionally be protecting the relationships that matter to you, whether you're married or single, whether you have kids or don't have kids. You still have relationships that are important to you. And if you don't, I'm going to encourage you to find some, and be intentional about that. And whether that's charity activity, whether that's, I mean, it's up to you, right? What is it for you? But human beings were made for connection. We are not made to live in a cave. We're not made to be quarantined, in our back bedroom studio for years at a time. We're designed internally, and how our brain works and how our soul works, to be in connections. And our business needs to honor those connections. All business is human business. Every business you're in is transacting with other human beings, providing solutions for other human beings. And the best solutions and the best businesses are the ones that meet the most human needs.
I love that. That's fantastic. So if someone's come in there, you've started with them on, you got down to their, intention, kind of reminding them why they started this in the first place, right? What's the real goal there? What's usually that first step then, once they have that and they're like, oh, okay, how does that plan of action start to formulate?
Well, I mean, it's creating boundaries. It's saying, all right, so this is the thing that's important to you, and maybe it's time with your kids. Maybe it's making sure you have an evening routine with your kids. And so how do we change what you're doing in your business on a daily basis to protect that? And we start out with small changes, right? We need to do small changes, but it really is taking control of every element of your life and business. And so it's being intentional with that relationship, being intentional with what's important, and saying, okay, I've been saying my family's really important to me, but I haven't been acting like it. So now I'm going to put it down on paper, and I'm going to say, these are the elements that are most important to me with my family. And for some, it might be putting your kids to bed. For some, it might be, having dinner together as a family. For others, it might be getting up and being able to have a morning routine and being able to drop the kids off at school, right? Whatever element that is, that becomes a priority on my calendar. And I'm going to build my business, and that is non-negotiable. I'm not, right? I wouldn't give up a meeting with, some important high-ranking person in my field, right? That's oh, hey, I got this meeting coming up with, Jason Croft, and he's just this great podcaster. He's got this great marketing business. I'm going to learn so much. But so many people are willing to put that meeting as more important than this thing they say is important.
Big
Right?
time.
I mean, we've all seen examples of business people choosing their business over their family because they get caught up in money's going to fix the family.
Yeah.
And ultimately it won't, because you've already
Right.
broken the relationships by the time you get the money.
Right. And then and again, it's another cycle that starts, right? It's that one, okay, well, we didn't go on vacation because we had this opportunity, but that's going to allow us. And then it's, oh, well, but now there's this one, and now there's this one, and now there's this one. And that's the same thing. I love this idea, though, of kind of getting it down on paper, though, because it also works the other way a little bit, because so, again, in our culture, so much of the time it's this work-life balance, and I never have it and stuff. And so you also start to formulate this idea of, when you feel that unhappiness, you feel those relationships starting to strain, and that story you're telling yourself is just like, I never see my kids, I never spend any time with them, I've never, and there's this half and half thing, like I should be working half the time and spending time with the kids half the, and we know life's not like that. It's not the way it works. And when you can get intentional, when you can find those little blocks, you can go like, oh, this, number one, this is doable, right? Because I've found as a dad too, it's moments, especially as they get older, it's moments. That 30 minutes, like, that was just gold and solid, and helped fill that bucket, right?
Well, and I think so. A couple misnomers. Obviously, work-life balance is a misnomer. You will always spend more time at work than with your family. That's just the reality of our expectations culturally, right? Until you get down to a 4-hour work week, right? And you and I both know that that's not really what Tim Ferriss does either. So, it's a great book title, but it's not what his real work life is. But I think a work-life balance is the teeter-totter, right? And you remember the goal on that, I mean, obviously teeter-totter, you teeter-totter, up and down, but then there's that moment where you both want to balance, right? And you rock back a little or you lean forward a little and you each get it. So the teeter-totter just stays right there in the middle. But you have to stop. Right? Balance really requires that moment where balance happens, all right, the family's balanced, everybody freeze. Don't move. Because if you move, we're going to be out of balance. So the idea of balance just doesn't work, right? You got to find harmony. And the cool thing about harmony is that no one family is the same. And we can honor each other's rhythms, right? And our culture has created this mom and pop expectation from the 50s that we want to plant on the family and have every family has to eat dinner together. A really good family has to eat dinner together. Oh no, a really good family, they sing songs and pray and put their kids to bed. Oh no, a really good family, they have breakfast and they walk the kids to the bus. And they stop in and have lunch with the kids at school. And no, you know what? You got to find out what works for you, right? Your rhythm and your family and your business. It's not universal. And I think we pull in these expectations from the world, from the Cleavers and want to have this family that looks like the Cleavers in a modern world with technology and computers and everything moving at the speed of light. Well, of course the Cleavers had a whole different opportunity, right? They didn't have the distractions that we have today and the opportunities, right? I mean, I think of the activities that were available when I was a kid, and my parents got involved in every activity that we got involved in. And you bring it to today, and the menu is just overwhelming. And the menu, especially if you have multiple kids and multiple activities and multiple schools and you've got to figure out a rhythm for yourself and honor that rhythm. But I think if you're intentional, you can teach your kids to be intentional and help them to start to focus and narrow down the options, because these options are just a distraction to what you really want, right?
Yeah.
And this idea of try it all, do it all, is a distraction that even, I've been caught up in, right? I didn't get to have a lot of things when I was a kid. So I tried to make up for it as an adult, right? And so now I got a huge Lego collection. I got this huge RC car collection. I got all these distractions. And the truth is that they don't serve my purpose. It's like, wait, no, these are things that aren't helping. They're not making me feel better because they're really pulling me away from what really matters.
Yeah. And not to mention, like, the Cleavers didn't exist, right? Like that idea, right? That's all ingrained in us because those are the kind of things that are, we bounce back as our measuring stick and stuff. And they didn't exist, right? That perfect family, even back then without all the distractions, right? Like it didn't happen that way for the vast majority. It's so important, I think. And I'm so grateful that our society is moving to really have this kind of discussion, right? Like to really open up and say, well, no, happiness, well-being, communication, these things are critical and important, and they're skills to develop. Yeah. This isn't, I'm a human. I know how to talk to other humans. I know how to be happy. I'm a human, right? And that's the other, you talk about misnomers and things like that we're just because we can talk to another person doesn't mean we're doing it the right way or that it couldn't be better in our communication, in our self-talk. And I just love that we are, even in, corporate culture's the slower moving bus, I think, but it's even that's getting there and some are being forced into it reluctantly, but at least it's happening and we're shifting in and having these kind of conversations there as well.
Absolutely. Well, I think, obviously from the 80s and 90s, the corporate power shifted to the C-suite and the CEO was kind of this, big, the share, he was beholden to the shareholders in spite, didn't matter what the workers wanted, didn't matter what the clients wanted for some companies. right? And I think you're right. I think we're coming to a place now where corporate is starting to recognize that, the shareholders are important and the C-suite is important, but we better take really good care of our employees because they're the front line that's taking care of our customers. And at the end of the day, the customers are the ones that we should be beholden to, not the shareholders. And I think there are some companies that are starting to recognize that. And there is I believe there is a structure within a company that can take care of all four of those, right? The shareholders can win, the C-suite can win, the employees can win, and the customers can win. And when you start to think of things in that way, it's shifted, when companies were able to lay off, hey, we're going to lay off 1,000 people. And that's happening right now, right? Lots of companies are laying off people to get their numbers in the right place. And I think there's, prior to the 80s, there was loyalty, right? My grandfather and great grandfather worked for the same company for, 40 years. and, and, and that went away, right? My dad worked for the same company for 29 years, but it was his third company. And then after that, I think the loyalty, is no longer a thing because companies aren't taking care of their loyal employees and not making it worthwhile to stay. And so their loyalty has to be, to themselves and make it okay for people to shift from, one company to another company. And I think the sad thing now is, people are finding out, wow, I got laid off. That was a terrible thing. Wait, I just got hired for, $10 more an hour over here because they're hiring like crazy. And so the marketplace is in this really odd, I think it's like almost a flux situation.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So what's somebody going through right now who, they're not going, I'm just not happy enough, I'm going to reach out to Rob, but they've got the symptoms, right? What are they experiencing to where they hear this like, oh, that sounds like me. I need to give Robert a call, and then how do they reach out, and where would you like people to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think the symptoms are discomfort, right? Like they do feel the stress, they do feel anxious. They're not, their joy bucket's empty by Wednesday, and the symptoms of that are it's creating challenges in their relationships with their wife or kids, or it's creating challenges in their other significant relationships, which whatever those relationships might be. If that relationship is a symptom of something probably going on in your business, or vice versa, right? I mean, obviously, it's interesting, when I was first coaching and just working with business clients focused on their business, how often they would say, well, my estranged relationship with my father doesn't impact my business. You know, yeah, sorry, but it really does. And these estranged relationships, um, our understanding of forgiveness in our culture is pretty poor, right? And we think when we forgive somebody that we're giving them permission, and so that we've made what they did okay. And and the complete opposite is true. Forgiveness is really a you and you deal, and it has to do with those emotional strings that person's tied around your heart. And it's interesting to find the number of people that still have these strings tied for an event that happened 5, 10 years ago. And every time that little emotion gets tapped or tugged or touched, that string just gets pulled, and you're really allowing this person that hurt you to continue to have influence and control over the decisions that you're making. And so really that's another big piece that we try to help people really dig into, not therapeutically, like if you've been assaulted and experienced trauma, and I absolutely recommend getting therapy, but on the forward looking side, we have to go back and not change the event, right? I can't undo if somebody's hurt you. I can't undo what they did, but I can undo how you think about it. I can undo how the story you're telling yourself about it, and shifting from, oh, I'm a victim and this terrible thing, to, what's the lesson I can learn from it so that I can let go of it, and being able to cut those strings so that now when that emotion gets touched today, it's just today's emotion. It's not pulling this entire experience forward. and impacting how you're making those decisions based on this bad relationship or that bad experience. And that can be really important for people that haven't learned how to forgive and haven't learned how to cut those emotional ties to the decisions that they're making moving forward. And I think forgiveness is, like communication, one of those tools that's not taught at any level. Even in the church, forgiveness is taught in a weird, funky way that makes people not understand forgiveness between one person and another, right? They understand God's forgiven them or, whatever, but not in a relationship and trying to make a relationship whole. And that can be really challenging, right? So if we learn to forgive and we learn to communicate, really powerful things can happen in relationships that allow you to fill your joy bucket. And it's really, I think, forgiveness is the first tool to plug the holes in the bucket.
I like that. So someone is yes, I need help with this. How do they reach out and find you and connect?
So our website's add value, 2 life. So addvaluetolife.com. And I'm on LinkedIn, Robert C. Peterson. It'll match. You can see, you'll see. And yeah, reach out through LinkedIn or through our website, and certainly love having conversations and love helping people at least identify the things that are going on.
Fantastic. Robert, thank you so much for being on. And this has been a great conversation. Really powerful.
Well, Jason, thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate you and appreciate our new connection, and just look forward to hanging out and doing more work together.
Heck yeah. And we'll see you all next time. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of this show. If you want help creating authority building video content or even a client generating show of your own, go to MediaLeadsCo.com and let's connect. I'll talk to you soon on the next Strategy in Action.